Welcome to the Groove Pod, where two cousins, music lovers, and audiophiles talk about their journeys with various types of equipment, including digital, streaming, vinyl, and everything else you can think of. We hope you enjoy the show. All right, we are back after a little bit of a delay. Sorry, everybody. Life's been a bit hectic for Nick lately with band commitments and various things. So you were gigging on the whole weekend last weekend, is that right?
Yes, two gigs back to back. It was a Friday evening and then a Saturday gig. Both were outdoors, and the Saturday gig was like indirect sun.
Ooh.
As in, yeah, we were out on a street. It was where I live. There's a street sort of festival, or a festival that happens every year called Duval Days, which is kind of fun. And there's you parade down the street, and everything from sort of vintage tractors to there was like an assault. No, that's not right. They're called the Seafair Pirates, and they have this sort of big boat thing. What do you call those weird boats that can sort of go up on land?
Yeah, those
amphibious vehicles, yeah. And then they've sort of turned it into a pirate ship, and they were letting off mortars and blowing everyone's eardrums out. And then, all the high school teams and the marching bands and all that kind of rigmarole. And then, our band played, and it was, I think it was the hottest, sunniest day so far this year. And it was, we were out in it for a solid almost 2 hours. So yeah, it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, it would.
As fun as it is, it was a lot. So yeah, apologies for missing the last recording appointment and therefore being behind now on episodes. So I hope it's okay.
I'm sure everyone will just catch up as and when we're here. Hopefully they won't forget about us in the meantime. But hey, if people are listening to this, they haven't, so we're all good.
And we have some mail, is that correct?
We have some mail, but we're going to hold off the mail because I think let's start talking about Raspberry Pi streaming solutions, because I may have misled you in the last episode.
All right, let's go.
Which is good news. It's good news. What I will say, though, is for anyone that wants to send us a question or some feedback on something we've said on the podcast or whatever you want to send through, it's askthegroovepod@gmail.com. And we do have a couple of emails that we'll get to either in this episode or the very next episode. We'll get to those because it's sort of vinyl related, and we're going to start off talking non-vinyl for a minute.
All right, sounds good.
Last episode, Nick, I told you that I thought Raspberry Pis had been surpassed in sound quality. You were talking about putting together a Raspberry Pi based system, and I said that there were some things around now that maybe made Raspberry Pis a little bit redundant. And I've been testing SMSL, is a Chinese brand that make DACs, headphone amps, speaker amps, all sorts of stuff, and they've released this little network streamer called an N100. It's about $400 US. It's the size of smaller than an A5 piece of paper. So it's a little bit bigger than the footprint's a bit bigger than a CD dual case. It's probably the size of a really compact CD player, I guess is what you'd probably describe it as. In terms of footprint, it's quite narrow and thin. It's only about an inch tall to work in Imperial. And I've been testing that, and it's blown my mind with how good it sounds. Like ridiculously good sound for a $400 streamer. It's got some niggles, which I've covered off in the review, so I won't go into them here. But the key thing I wanted to talk about here was that as part of the review, I pulled out my old Raspberry Pi 3 with the Hi-Fi Berry, I think it's called the Digi Pro or the Digi Pro Plus hat, which is that hardware attached on top circuit board, and plugging that in the little Raspberry Pi, which you could set up today with a modern level 5, like generation 5 Raspberry Pi. You could set that same system up for about $200 US, and it was as good as the N100 was, which is really impressive. So the N100 was almost as good as a really, really expensive streamer I've got here, and the Raspberry Pi was about as good as well. So it's still a worthy thing, and I was incorrect in my last statements about that.
And that was specifically a Raspberry Pi 5.
The one I'm using is a Raspberry Pi 3.
Oh, 3. That's what I have.
Yeah, with this sort of stuff, you don't need a high power unit. It's not doing anything unless if you're asking it to do major upsampling or resampling of the audio. So to go from, say, a normal CD quality 44 kilohertz file, if you're trying to get it to upsample it to DSD or something, that might be a problem. But generally speaking, it's not going to be an issue at all. It's going to work just fine with general playback of audio up to 192 kilohertz, for instance, from Qobuz, Tidal, local libraries have ripped CDs. It's all going to be fine.
Well, that's very good to hear, because I immediately downed tools and decided that was going to be a fruitless project based on our last conversation. So I'm happy to hear now that that's not the case because I'd love to. I probably would have gotten around to playing with it anyway, just for funsies.
Mhm.
But now if it's definitely going to be a good quality
Yeah.
outcome, then I'll definitely give that a go.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge will then come down to which software you choose to run on it. I was running Rune. Are you familiar with Rune, Nick? Have you played with Rune?
Maybe I'm trying to look it up here now. How do you spell it? Is it RUNE?
ROON. So it's
Rune.
like room, but with an N instead of an M on the end.
Yeah, I see it. Yep, Rune.
It's an expensive piece of software. You can either
Okay.
subscribe to it or you can buy it as a lifetime thing for a small fortune. When I got it years ago, it was a whole lot cheaper. I bought a lifetime. I think it was a lifetime thing for about $400 or $500 many years ago. I think now it's about $800. And it's a brilliant software. It's the most convenient and easy to use playback software I've found for an integration of your local library and your streaming services. So it's got Qobuz, Tidal. It might have a couple others these days as well. No good for those that are using Apple Music or Amazon Music. But they have a very simple to install. So you can just literally just download a package onto a micro SD card, chuck it into your Raspberry Pi, and it will run the software to make it what they call a headless Rune endpoint. So you don't need a monitor or keyboard or a mouse attached. You literally just power on the Raspberry Pi. If you happen to plug in the monitor, you'll see it runs through some code on the screen, and it just sits there and waits for Rune to tell it what to play after that and to send it the music files. And so that sounds fantastic. I don't know if it's going to be different with other softwares. Volumio is one that's very good, and I know they make a distribution for Raspberry Pis, but I haven't played with
Volumio
that
was the
one.
one that I had started to look at and was sort of
Yep.
getting ready to install.
And it is a very good software. It's what's running on that SMSL that I spoke about. It's also what's running on the very expensive streamer that I spoke about because it's actually made by Volumio, that streamer. They make excellent software and streamers. So it would be a good choice, and it should sound just as good as what I've experienced.
Well, great. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. So have you built a Raspberry Pi streamer?
Yes.
And how long ago was that? When did you do this?
4 or 5 years ago, I think, at least.
Got it. So I wonder if that process has changed. The process probably hasn't changed much, but I wonder if
Right.
the software solutions, I mean, we just talked about two of them, but I wonder how much they may have evolved in the last 4 or 5 years.
There'll no doubt be new versions, but in most cases, they're just an endpoint.
Okay.
So you're going to be controlling it in many cases from some sort of third-party app. In the case of Volumio, it might be Volumio's app running on your smartphone. And there are others as well. I know that I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but I know when I built this Raspberry Pi that there were many to choose from, and I went down the Rune path because I was using Rune. It made sense to stick with Rune. But I know that there are a lot of others. They're all going to be much of a muchness, is my understanding. Software, I did a comparison review recently between JRiver, Rune, and Autovana, which are 3 PC or Windows-based softwares. And running on a PC, those softwares do ever so slightly alter the sound quality. Not enough that I would make the decision based on sound, but it does make a difference. So there's a chance that Volumio, Rune, or some other playback OS for the Raspberry Pis might make a slight difference, but I doubt it's something that you need to spend too long worrying about. And I'd go more based on the interface and the functionality that it brings. In other words, Volumio, if you want to be using UPnP servers or other services that maybe Rune doesn't handle, or for those that out there that are listening and they're all about Rune, the Rune endpoint just makes so much sense because it gives you instant, perfect, seamless integration into Qobuz, Tidal, and local music files.
Well, I am excited to give this a go then.
I'm actually excited to find out that it's as good as I used to think it was. It still actually is. And the idea, I mean, for those that haven't seen a Raspberry Pi, I'm holding it in the palm of my hand right now, and it's a little bit bigger than a credit card in terms of its footprint. And the height of it is only about 2 inches tall. And the width of it, the footprint's the credit card. So take a stack of credit cards 2 inches tall, and that's the size of the Raspberry Pi. So you can very quickly and easily chuck it behind a bit of furniture, a speaker, something to hide it, and you've got yourself a really nice little hideaway streaming device to plug into the rest of your hi-fi system. It's a really cool system.
Now, can you get your hands on one though at the moment? What's the latest with trade and tariffs and inventory being run down or hoarded or whatever? Is that impacting access to these kind of devices?
That's a great question. I haven't looked into it because I've already got this one here. I didn't bother looking into buying a new one, but that is an interesting question. I don't know where Raspberry Pis. Hang on, let me have a look and see if it says made in somewhere on it. Nothing's jumping out at me. I don't know where these are made. I would pretty much guarantee that some of the processors used will be coming from China or Taiwan, or South Korea perhaps. So there is a really good chance that there will be tariffs. But when I looked it up, and I looked it up for a review, so it would have been US dollars I was looking at. When I looked it up, you could buy the Raspberry Pi board, I think was about $100, and that was for a Raspberry Pi 5, which you don't need to go that high. And then the little hat, which is the extra module that sits on top and does the dedicated digital handling, or you can get it as a DAC that will output it through RCA outputs, for instance. Those were coming in at less than $100 from memory. And then the Perspex case, like the total bundle I worked out was going to be just under $200 for everything you needed. And that was current pricing as of probably a week ago that I did that review. So it's very, very affordable, considering that to buy the SMSL N100, which is going to look nicer because it's in a nice aluminium case, it's a little bit sculpted. To buy that, you're going to be looking at $419. And I don't know how tariffs are going to affect that if you are actually buying it in the US. But yeah, I mean, the Raspberry Pi is still going to be bucket load cheaper if you're happy to fiddle around a little bit with the getting a micro SD card and loading the software onto it and stuff like that. They can be a little bit finicky to set up. I've had a few times where I tried different operating systems and it glitched and it wouldn't boot, in which case you've got to turn it off, pull out that card and try and work out what you did wrong. But if you're buying one of those kind of, or not even buying, a lot of it's free. If you're downloading the free softwares, a lot of the time they just work. So yes, I don't think it's going to change the pricing. Sorry, something went through my head, which is on tariffs. I've noticed that a lot of the retailers now are covering the tariffs themselves.
Interesting.
So you go to their website and they'll say, basically, this is the price you'll pay wherever you are in the world, or for US-based retailers, this is the price you pay, and they're covering the tariffs as part of their shipping costs, I guess, essentially. So I don't know if they've built it in somewhere by raising the prices or raising their shipping costs for those that charge for shipping. But it's good that there's a lot of responses to make it less impactful and less uncertain, I think, is the key. People don't have to buy something and then not quite know what their extra bill is going to be when it suddenly comes into the country.
And my little AI friend here is telling me that actually the majority of Raspberry Pis are made and assembled in the UK.
In the UK, really?
So that's either a complete fabrication from the AI or very, very surprising.
But it says that the UK, it doesn't strike me as the center of the world for that kind of device production.
I agree, but my little AI friend here says that since September 2012, production has been carried out at the Sony UK Technology Centre in Pencoed, Wales.
Wow.
And as of July 2024, it was confirmed that the latest Raspberry Pi 5 units are rolling off production lines in the Welsh facility.
There you go.
So there you go.
Tariffs, hopefully.
Looks like there might be some components that do still come out of Japan and Taiwan and China. But apparently UK. So that's I guess that's a goodish sign, maybe, in terms of being somewhat shielded from the uncertainty of the world of tariffs.
And I think the way that would work is that because those products from Taiwan and China will have gone to the UK, been placed on a board, and then the board, as part of the whole product, is then shipped to the US, I don't think US customers will be paying those additional tariffs that Chinese and Taiwanese type products do attract. In which case, I think they're just paying whatever the tariff is, if there's a tariff with the UK. So that's probably not too bad.
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
Awesome. Oh, well, I've got homework again.
You do have homework again. Drop. Is there anything else?
What's next? What's next on the agenda?
Yes. So let's talk about the emails that we received. So I think going back one or maybe two episodes, it's all a bit foggy at this point, but going back to those episodes, we were talking about your turntable and you were talking about whether or not it was time to take out the integrated RCA cables and solder in new ones or solder in sockets, whether or not you could change more than I think you could change the stylus, but you couldn't change the whole cartridge.
Correct.
And so we've had emails from Craig and from Peter. Sorry, I had to get into his email because his email address just said P. So P was for Peter. So Craig and Peter have both had exactly the same thing to say, which is that you need to upgrade your turntable. In the case of Craig's email, he's gone into a bit more depth, but the gist of it from both of them is that your turntable just doesn't leave you enough places to upgrade.
Right.
And they're both saying that a lot of other turntables on the market are going to give you a much bigger upgrade path that you can choose to follow if and when you're ready to.
Do either of them have a recommendation?
Yeah, I was just actually skimming through Craig's email specifically to have a look for that. He's also linked there to a crutchfield.com article called Beginner's Guide, Buying Your First Turntable to Spin Those Vinyl Records. And there's another one from Turntable Lab that's very similar. There's actually some really good resources there that I can't share here, but I will try and put the links into the show notes for this episode for those that want them. So basically what these two people are saying is there are so many different things in the turntable that you could consider, that it's really good to buy one that's going to let you upgrade all of them. So everything from the tone arm, the cartridge, the head shell. He's recommending, this is Craig's recommending, a belt drive versus a direct drive, and he has touched on this, so I'm not suggesting Craig said the wrong thing here. I listened to a really interesting interview a little while back. It was a John Darko podcast, or Darko Audio, people might know it as. And he was talking to someone who's very experienced in the audio world. He's a designer of speakers and probably other audio products too. And what he was basically saying was there's no inherent benefit that's better between direct drive or belt drive, and that each of them have their own problems. So a direct drive can be better if it's well designed, and a belt drive can be better if it's really well designed as well. Because what he said was with the belt, when they started studying the belt drive, what they found was that the belt, which is wrapped between, so that you've got a motor sitting in one part of the turntable, and then you've got your spindle directly under the platter, and a belt that runs between them that transfers the torque from the motor to the turntable. And what he was saying was that they did some tests on the belts that they were doing for this particular turntable design, and they found that the belt was stretching differently as it moved along the path of so going around the two cogs, or whatever you call it, drive wheels. And what they were finding then was that the speed of the turntable wasn't actually as consistent as they thought it would be, because this belt was constantly expanding and contracting as the forces changed on it as it went round and round this loop. And his point being that therefore a really good direct drive could actually be better because you've got the motor physically attached to the turntable and driving it. So if you've got a really good smooth motor, you're going to have a really good smooth turntable motion. So that's the upshot. Is everyone's saying upgrade your turntable. They're saying research it first. They haven't said specifically which one, but research it first and find one that's going to let you change anything and everything you might want to change in the future, so you've got lots of versatility and upgradability.
That's really interesting, because those are great links, and thank you, Peter. That was Peter, or that was Craig?
Craig that sent the links.
Well, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Peter. I look forward to reading through both your mails and seeing your recommendations. I think I might have I certainly went to an article at one point, or a guide. It could have been on Reddit, actually, that was sort of, how to buy your first record player. And while I certainly goofed, I think, in my decision, or maybe I'll defend myself a little bit more, that I sort of didn't know what I didn't know. So maybe it wasn't the world's worst purchase. I certainly goofed in buying the replacement cartridge without checking whether or not the record player could have a replacement cartridge. But I remember reading that belt drives, or at least one of the arguments for a belt drive, was that it creates sort of a sound buffer, or it allows for the vibration and the noise of the actual motor, which is obviously spinning in order to spin the platter. It creates some sort of separation from that and allows for sort of better, I guess, isolation or sort of reduction in noise. But I wonder then how to balance that trade-off, right? So it sounds like, yes, it can create some sort of separation or reduce some of that noise and vibration coming through. But if the belt itself is, as you say, contracting and expanding, minutely, which then obviously adjusts, which would then impact the consistency of the rotation of the platter. I wonder what the trade-off is versus if you go direct, then, okay, maybe you get a more consistent platter sort of velocity, but maybe then you do get more potential noise there. But perhaps with modern sort of construction manufacturing techniques, they've been able to overcome some of those noise, rumble, transfer issues.
Yeah, and I think it's going to depend on the level you go to as well. So what I've taken from the little tiny bit that I've done in research of it is that a high-end direct drive is going to minimize the vibrations in the motor to start with. So it's going to be a very silky, smooth motor, and therefore you're not going to have to worry about vibrations transferring through, versus a cheaper belt drive. But then if you flip that around, a more expensive belt drive is going to have a better belt. It might be that they're using a shorter belt, so there's less stretch and length of that band to actually stretch. So both seem to be equally as good if they're designed to their optimal level, is what I've taken away from it.
wonder if you could make utilize a different material for the belt that doesn't have that risk of fluctuating in length, whether it's expansion or contraction. I don't know what else you'd use, but
Yeah, I think the trouble
Kevlar
then is that
or carbon fiber or something.
yeah, the problem will be if you have a material that doesn't have a little bit of stretch, then it's going to transmit any vibrations coming from the motor
Yes.
through that cord, and then you're back to where you were. 'Cause otherwise, you'd have some like a cog and tooth nylon material or something that's really rigid and firm, but then it's going to transmit all those vibrations. So it's sort of it's a double-edged sword, that one. You fix one thing, you bring in the other.
Maybe they could be some sort of pneumatic system where it's blowing air and or
A windmill under your turntable.
or magnets. Maybe just magnets.
That's what I thought. Magnets and a direct drive system where your motor is not physically attached to the
Like a maglev train, like those crazy maglev trains in like China or Eastern Europe or something like that. That would be interesting.
Well, that technology's out there because way off topic here. But if you look at something like a Thermomix, have you got a Thermomix in the kitchen?
Maybe under a different name. What is that?
It's one of those all-in-one cooking devices where it'll mix it for you, chop it for you. It'll cook within. It's like a super powered food processor, essentially.
I have a horribly overpriced blender thing that says like you can make soup in this, and I don't know if that's the same
it'd be
thing.
one of those. Yeah,
Okay.
by a different name. So Thermomix was kind of the original, if you like.
Okay.
And then others have come out and copied them, but I don't know about all of them. But in the Thermomix, they use, if I remember correctly, they use a magnetically coupled motor system. And so I can't remember the details of it, but I was thinking along the lines of, for turntables, you have...
It'd probably spin the record a bit too fast, though. Like, I don't think that's the right...
the Thermomix, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a record on top of your Thermomix.
You'd probably disintegrate the record and end up with something like one of the episodes on the Slow-Mo Guys, where they deliberately ran a record with a power drill to see what would happen at certain revolutions, and eventually it just cracks and disintegrates. It's quite spectacular to watch.
Oh, cool.
So if anyone wanted to see that, do a search on YouTube for Slow-Mo Guys, probably vinyl records or LPs or something like that.
Did they have a stylus and a cartridge and a tone arm like on it as well to like try and pick up some of the sound as it goes?
That would have been interesting. I wonder what would happen if you tried to pick up the speed of it. Oh no, because first of all, your needle's not going to track very well across the record. But secondly, if you're spinning it at thousands of RPMs, the needle's just going to run from the side to the middle so fast you wouldn't really hear anything other than...
That's true.
Yeah, but it would have been fun if you could have made it to track. That could be really interesting. What does music sound like at 100 times speed?
I guess we can do that pretty easily in an MP3 player. But anyway,
that's
still, it would be less fun. It'd be more fun, doing it on actual record. What were we talking about?
Good question. We were talking about your turntable and upgrading your turntable and the feedback from viewers. If this segment of this episode's been horrendously appalling to you, everybody, just send us an email at askthegroovepod@gmail.com, I should say. But yeah, we were talking about upgrading your turntable. So it basically sounds like it's time to go out and do some research and find one where you can upgrade the tone arm. I don't know if there's turntables that can upgrade the drive systems on them. Obviously, whatever you buy is going to be either belt drive or direct drive. I don't think that's going to be changeable, but you might be able to buy one where you can upgrade the belt or upgrade the motor, or that's probably the only two things you could upgrade now that I think about it. But there's probably lots of different things you can look for in terms of what's upgradable, but the obvious things being tone arm, cartridge, I can't think what they call it now, but the head of the tone arm that holds the cartridge, possibly the weighting and tuning and balancing system on the back of the tone arm, unless that's attached to the tone arm, I'm not sure. So there's obviously lots of different things to think about for you in terms of buying something that's got all that flexibility. And I'm guessing it's not going to require a huge investment in the short term, but it then opens you up for the ability to just gradually invest more in the long term.
Yes. One thing I have seen in a little bit of my research is that there is a difference. Things like the cartridges and to a lesser extent styluses are designed to be modular and are designed to be sort of very easily user replaceable. But you really can find aftermarket parts for almost everything. And so, if you're brave enough to, open up your device with a screwdriver and sometimes even get a soldering iron out, it looks like you can and sort of replace, if not upgrade, most things. But, there's some sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but I think at some point you sort of cross a line from the manufacturer intended you to be able to sort of somewhat easily swap these parts in and out versus no, the sort of the broader community has worked out if you unscrew this thing and unsolder this thing and solder that thing, you can replace it. But I'm very excited to read through Craig and Peter's mails, and help me narrow down my options, because there's a lot of them. That's the other thing too. There's actually, I'm shocked at just how many different manufacturers, but then models for each manufacturer there are out there. It's actually pretty incredible.
Absolutely. Let's put the call out there. If people listening have got suggestions of a good turntable to start, or a couple of turntable options for Nick to start looking at, to think about where he should go next. So the criteria being that it has to be something that gives a long and varied upgrade path is how I'm taking it. If anyone's got suggestions for that, again, ask thegroovepod@gmail.com, and it'd be really cool to see some of those options, and we can chat about them as sort of the next stage in this journey.
Great.
And I think on that note, let's keep this one short and tight and wrap things up there for this episode.
Well, that'll be different.
Yeah, rather than rambling on for another half hour.
I don't know if you can tell, I'm on a different microphone too. So I don't know if it's I'm very conscious of hearing my own voice echoing sort of around the room. So if I sound a little different on this episode, that's what it is. But hopefully I'll be back in my regular recording space next time.
Once your PC starts killing itself. Yeah, so no, it sounds fine from here. So hopefully it sounded good to everybody else as well.
Awesome. All right.
Excellent. Well, let's leave this one here and stay in the groove, or in the pod, or whatever we want to say.
Stay in the pod groove.
We'll chat to everybody again on the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Groove Pod. Until next time, happy listening, and we hope you'll join us again.